Guys, we're going to go all over the place with these calls based on the caller ID. Let's go to Jeff. First off, Jeff, I'll let you tell people where you're calling from in case you're on the run from the law, anything you don't want anybody to know.
Hi. I'm calling from Mexico City right now.
Very good. Very good.
Thanks for your call, Jeff. Go ahead.
I found you guys last week with all this realignment, and I really do like what you guys talk about. My thing is, though, I think actually the Big 12 doesn't have as much power because if Texas and Oklahoma leave, yes, they'll have a buyout. And right now that would be about $20 million per team. But once they leave, your annual television contract is going to go down to about $9 million per team. So a team like Iowa State, a team like Baylor, and TCU, that $9 million is not going to pay very many different coaches.
And that's something they do have to worry about, which is why they need to, again, hold out. And thanks for your call, Jeff. That's why they have to hold out for as long as they can, bottom line, and get as much money as they can and hope that something else comes of the Big 12 with a renegotiated TV deal and that they can get that money. Because, again, they're not going to get $37 million with Oklahoma and Texas gone. And I can't imagine there's other schools that could come in that would get up to $37 million. But is there schools you can get in that could get you up to 30?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, we've looked at the pickings, and they're slim, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of maximum ratings out there and that are available. And I agree with you, Jeff, that ultimately that's what's going to happen. Like, I don't – trust me, I don't sit here with a whole lot of confidence in the future of the Big 12. I think the conference is DOA. I've suggested that even if they somehow remain together, just change the name. I mean, just burn it and get rid of it. It's toxic. But – you know, on the flip side, let's say that Oklahoma and Texas don't pay that fine and that everybody just jumps off board. Not all of them are going to necessarily find a Power 5 life raft. So if let's say you're TCU and you're kind of in limbo, and you may or may not have an opportunity in the Power 5. I think most people feel like TCU probably would, but let's just say for the sake of it that they don't. They need that buyout money more than ever. So either way, these teams need that buyout money. Like, they need to have that. They need to, because you either get it and then you go into this $9 million a year potentially if you don't make it into a big conference. And yes, that dips you way down and that changes everything. But at least you had that 20+ million that you got right before that to help you a little bit. If you don't get that money, and then you jump into a non-Power 5 conference and you're making $9 million a year or whatever it is, I mean, then you're really hurting for cash. So if this whole move, and we know that it was about money, well, the Big 12 needs to make their moves about money because that's what's going to keep these programs alive or not, along with, other factors like TV ratings and everything. But it started with money, and I think the Big 12 is going to end with money one way or the other.
All right, let's go. 254-339-1122. Independent schools, Brigham Young, Army, can they survive in college football? BYU can. Not sure if that lets them have a chance. Army is going to be independent, I think, for quite a long time. Navy did join conference, the AAC, and has been pretty good at times, of course, with Coach Ken as well.
You don't want to say his last name?
No, I don't. I would rather just say he's a hell of a coach at Navy.
Ryan in Idaho, you're on SIGM 365 Radio. Thanks for your call.
Hi, I'm thinking you guys aren't giving Boise State enough credit. They made their own ESPN deal. I think the only way you get BYU into the Big 12 is with Boise State, add UCF and USF in there. You have 12 teams again, and Boise State is playing Oklahoma State and UCF this year. So it would be a great testing for this year for the upcoming for the Big 12.
Look, Ryan, I wouldn't hate it if Boise State if they have to go that route of the non-Power 5 teams to bring them in. I wouldn't hate Boise State being in this league. I think they've proven themselves in enough sports beyond football too that they could contribute in the non-revenues as well. And I wouldn't hate it. I just don't think. Again, I think that part of the thing about the Big 12 not already just going out and getting some schools like that is it. I don't know how much it does for them financially. Boise State, notwithstanding, I think that's kind of the problem.
All right. There's been some discussion, by the way, about the Big Ten and the Pac-12. We'll get to that as well. Go ahead, Craig. You respond to what Paul was just mentioning.
Yeah, no, I got all the respect in the world for Boise State. Jeremiah Dickey, who we got to know very well here in Waco the last few years, is the brand new athletic director there. So I'd love to see Jeremiah Dickey and Mac Rhodes being able to shake hands, at midfield. I think that would be awesome. It's not discounting Boise State. Boise State's just in a group with Baylor, TCU, all these other schools that we're just trying to sort through, and I'd be cool with them joining the conference, but I also am not these athletic directors or officials who know exactly what they would or would not bring. I think it's easy for all of us to kind of say, like, well, they do this and they do that, but there's also a lot of other stuff that goes into these decisions, that we don't necessarily consider because we're not in those positions. So I don't know how Boise State's viewed behind the scenes by Big 12 people. I mean, obviously there's been some interest there in the past. I'd be cool as long as it was something that made sense. But, yeah, we'll see. I'm sure they're on the short list of at least interest.
Lots of Roll Tide today on the YouTube channel. Lots of Roll Tide. And I don't know who's leading it, but Bama boys won. That makes sense. Nick Barnett among some others. Great to have a lot of you. 254-339-1122. We're going to hear from an Alabama analyst, and we're going to hear from LSU analysts, and we're going to hear from others throughout this week as well, looking at every angle we possibly can.
All right, from the home of one of the great restaurants in the world, Doe's Eat Place, Steven from Greenville, Mississippi. You're on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Hey, I just discovered y'all Friday. Love the show.
Thank
you. Quick question. Doesn't the Big 12 get an automatic playoff berth?
Yes. Oh, no, not right now. Not until they were to expand, which we don't know when that's going to take. That's kind of like realignment. That might take a while, but the Big 12 does not get an automatic. I know the SEC seems to, and they've earned it. But no, they don't get an automatic berth, at least not until the conference or the championship playoff expands. Then they would if they're still alive.
Well, I think their best bet is to take the best of the ACC and the best, or not the ACC, South Florida and all them, and the best of the Mountain West, and move on from there. All right. Enjoy the show, y'all.
Thank you. Appreciate you listening. From Chandler, who cares about how many Fortune 500 companies are in the area? Cincinnati is not better than West Virginia academically or athletically or historically or geographically. As Chandler and somebody else going at it when it comes to who should be accepted one way or the other. And I love that, too. One thing we love, talk your trash. Enjoy it. Be powerful. Enjoy your team. Fight for your team. But there's no reason to, get really, in the mud. Unless your rivals like Alabama, Auburn. But even they get along when it comes to the conference itself, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
All right, let's go to Tim in Iowa. You're on Sikkim 365 Radio. Thanks for your call.
Hey, thank you, guys. We talked on Monday. I'm the old 65-year-old who loves to look at the college football history and help it predict the future. I want to dovetail on what Craig was saying, that some of these schools are not as attractive as maybe they think they were. I don't know if you remember from Monday's call, I talked about the Southern Conference. They had all the schools from Mississippi to Virginia were in the Super Conference back in the 50s. Well, I did some more research on that, and in the 50s, the Southern Conference had North Carolina, North Carolina State, Clemson, and so forth, the teams that broke away in 1953 to join the Atlantic Coast Conference, and one of their partners was West Virginia, but they left West Virginia along with some smaller schools alongside of the road. So they were together at one time, and the ACC left them behind. So whenever I hear people talk about, well, West Virginia is a perfect fit for the Atlantic Coast Conference, I don't think so, because why would they have gone to the Big East, and why would they have gone to the Big 12 if they were such a perfect fit for the Atlantic Coast? Because the Atlantic Coast schools, the bigger schools, the more prestigious schools, left them back in the 50s. So why would they bring them back in the fold now?
It's a great point. Thanks for the call. Appreciate. That's in Iowa, right? Aren't you? Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I love the history part, too.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate it. And I think, the ACC West Virginia talk, I mean, here's what you need. Everybody needs to realize, including myself, that, there's a lot of fans talking about what they hope for, right? So almost like trying to speak it into existence and will it to happen. The West Virginia ACC talk, most of what I see is just geographically it seems to make sense, and that's kind of where it starts and stops on most of the arguments that I see. But one of the things that I was reading was, West Virginia would make sense for the ACC if they also got Notre Dame. Like, that's why it would make sense for the ACC. Okay, we added one, we need to add two. We got Notre Dame. All right, now let's add West Virginia. But if they don't get Notre Dame, why should the ACC add anybody else?
They shouldn't.
Right.
Because all you're doing is breaking, because you have a contract that runs through like 37 or whatever it is, 30, whatever. I
think it's like 2036 maybe.
You're bringing somebody on, if it's not Notre Dame that adds to the pie, you're going to start splitting up one more piece of the pie for nothing, other than just to say we've added a team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so, if you add Notre Dame, great. You need one more team now to balance that out. Who can we go get? Okay, West Virginia. That makes sense. But if you don't add Notre Dame, why does West Virginia matter? Because then you need to add two teams.
Yeah.
So, I don't think the ACC, especially with their contract length, that they're in any push, rush, hurry to do anything. Now, if Notre Dame jumps on board, though, then watch things fly and watch things start to happen. But as we know with them, they don't really need to do anything right now either. They can kind of just sit back and observe what is going on.
They could literally wait for every single domino to fall and then say, here's what we're going to do, and call the conference they want to go to and say that's where they're going.
Yeah.
I mean, because again, they know that they're in that kind of a spot. They could honestly, if they pick the right school, maybe get them kicked out of a conference to take their place.
Probably.
Like, hey, we know you guys want to be at 16. We're not nuts about Wake Forest.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. But I mean, they do
I know.
They do have some weight to throw around.
They have some weight to throw around. All right, from ACC.
Let's go to Ron. Help me understand how other teams potentially leaving the Big 12 are going to be able to pay their massive exit fees. Should they leave? And I had somebody else send that to me, and in fact, one of these, and that's not even something that's been brought up. Thank you, Ron, among this other from the 210. If we're talking about Texas and Oklahoma and the fees they're going to have to pay if they were to leave after a year and even negotiate or not, how can Iowa State, Kansas State, Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, any of them? They can't do that either. So if they do leave, they would get hammered with the grant of rights as well. And that has not been brought up. At least I don't remember it, and it's a great point.
I'm telling you right now, like I was saying earlier, if I'm Baylor and like TCU and two other schools who we know that we're kind of uncertain, we are making a blood pact that we are, the four of us, we are not budging. And that way, either, like I said earlier, you're either getting like 7 buyout money figures, which again, not everybody could even afford. So that makes that a bit of a predicament. But you're either getting a ton of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars, and then you take that big stack of Donald Duck cash, and then you figure out where you're going to play football for the rest of your lives. But at least you have that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got nothing, and you're out on your own in the same predicament, but without 20 plus million, or no, it'd be way more than that.
Let's just say Kansas State got an offer.
Yeah.
And they can't pay their buyout fee.
Yeah.
You're going to make them stay. Like they have to stay or they have to pay the buyout fee. So again, that's the other thing. And that's a great point. Texas and Oklahoma can pay their buyout fee. Baylor, TCU and all these others, who knows if they can.
They can, but they they already are not tapped out. They're never tapped out. And I know for those of you who have listened before, you've heard me say this, Baylor has whatever money they need, but it's not like they just constantly want to keep writing checks. They've done it. They will, even through dark times, but that's something that's a little bit heavy for a lot of the schools other than the big, huge statewide universities that have donors that don't mind writing checks for $5 or $10 million.
All right, let's get 2 calls in before we go to break.
Yep.
Let's go to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Did not get your name, but Chapel Hill, you're on Sick'em 365 Radio.
Hey, boys. I'm Connor. I'm actually calling from Durham, so pretty close.
Okay.
But in the same scenario where like all of the major schools form like their own NFL minor league, for those schools that aren't involved in that, so like Duke for me, obviously, would it be possible for the college football arms race to just stop being a thing?
I mean, if you just took the big power players out of it, like if they decided, screw the rest of you guys.
How many power players, someone asked this earlier, and it's a great question, how many power players really are there among the 65 to 68 Power 5 football pro?
I'd say like 20 to 25, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So if you took that 20, like let's just say 24 is a nice round even number. So you took the 24 teams that are the most power brokers out of it. and they did their own thing in their own league that was the NFL Junior.
Which is kind of what people think is happening, yeah.
And so if you got to that point, which means that the Vanderbilts and Baylors and Dukes of the world are probably out in the cold.
Sure.
Then the college football arms race changes completely, and that you have to it's a tiered race. Like it's now.
So then you're talking about perhaps having one major mega conference, the NIL, the NFL 2.
Probably would make sense to call it the NIL because that's what's created a lot of this.
That's created, and I've even seen a few notes about that. And then you're talking about you're not going to get. There are no gimmies. The NFL, there's still gimmies, even though it's parity and you never know. And every game's hard to win. A 22-team conference, a 20-team conference with 2 divisions. That would be unbelievable that every week it's LSU, Ohio State, or it's Oklahoma against Florida every week.
And
every single week.
And then randomly Vanderbilt versus somebody.
But then the other division would be, I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think that is something to look at. That you have this super mega conference and then everybody else that is trying to fight for their lives. The problem is, will television want everybody else and give them the kind of money to continue to support their facilities, coaches, and money?
Would it be like the NFL and the USFL?
That's where who's the USFL? The power teams?
The non-power.
To answer his question,
we've seen what's happened to that.
To answer your question about the arms race, I think the arms race amongst those major teams will still continue. I mean, there's no reason for it to really dip off, and they're still going to be competing as hot and heavy as ever. I mean, Oklahoma's not going to go join a conference with Alabama and Auburn and not have some improvements in mind on what they want to do or what they need to bring to a different level. So I think for that big conference, that's going to forever be the case. Those are all the same schools. Most of the schools in that conference are the ones that were doing the colored waterfalls and bringing that to the forefront, and barbershops in the facilities and things like that. That's kind of where it all started, quite frankly. So I would expect that to continue because those schools aren't going to get less competitive. If anything, they're going to get more. But for the Baylors, TCUs, that second tier, Iowa State, maybe K-State, those types of schools, I think there will be a downgrade in that for sure because the money's not going to be the same. It's just simply not going to be there.
It's going to depend on alternate type ways to broadcast games and if they get involved. And we mentioned this before, as that's what the Big 12 and others have to make sure they think outside the box, ahead of the curve. Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, things like that. I got to read this one, Paul, then a call. I know we got tongue-in-cheek from the 254. Baylor should reach out to Elon Musk and SpaceX. Chip and Joanna Magnolia and go independent on the Magnolia television network. I've seen that before.
They probably get higher ratings.
They might get better ratings, and that's a bunch of money right there. There's no question.
I know that sounds insane in a way and very tongue-in-cheek, but part of me goes, well, if worse came to worse, then you needed a place to show games.
Yeah.
Look,
the audience would sure be, it would be very much heavily women, right?
Yeah. But, and Elon Musk, that guy, he spends money on, he's trying to get to space.
Yeah, he just kind of got in a rocket ship.
For less money than that per year, he can buy a college football team.
And they test just down the road.
No,
they're building a second facility.
For those of you listening to us, we're in the Waco area, the Central Texas area, and when SpaceX starts to test their rockets, you can hear it. It's like an earthquake.
Yeah.
Even, no matter where you are, you can hear it. It's kind of cool. Because we now know what it is.
One of my favorite things is I joined the Nextdoor app when I bought a house just so I can watch people say silly things. Mm-hmm. And the best part about it is when you've just moved into the neighborhood, you'll get an alert that says, "What is that?"
Yeah. For people that don't know, it's kind of like, it's a great point. All right, 254-339-1122. Brian Estridge on TCU in the next segment after this call. Okay. 4 o'clock today, Max Olson, theathletic.com, college football. And then also today, Aaron Lockett, former Kansas State star, will join us, an NFL agent. 5 o'clock, we'll also have John Machota on the Cowboys. Here we go.
Sean in Buffalo, you're on Sigum 365. Thanks for your call.
Hey, man, I'm just so shocked by Texas and Oklahoma really running to the SEC. I'm from Bama, moved up to New York, and it's just like, wow, so much money to go around for everybody. Now, how are 18-year-old kids out of high school going to turn away from this type of money, especially with the NIL and all that being into effect now? I just really want to know y'all guys' thoughts on that.
I thought the idea was good, like the transfer portal. but then they took a big needle of steroids in both, and I think ruined both. That's my opinion.
Okay, here's a story coming from Pete Thamel at Yahoo that Quinn Ewers.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, the quarterback at South Lake Carroll High School.
South Lake Carroll High School is considering skipping his senior year and enrolling at Ohio State so he can cash in his NIL deals right now. Because the UIL won't allow it. The state of Texas won't allow it. They can't. High school players can't have NIL deals. So Quinn Ewers could move up to Ohio State and get his NIL deals now, which brings in another problem with the NIL. Listen, this guy's a great high school quarterback. He's done good things. He's the #1 prospect in the country. But you don't know that he's going to be good in college yet.
No,
you never know. Even though he's a 5-star and played in the state championship game against Lake Travis, we know he's a great player. In fact, he was originally a Texas commit.
How much money would Tate Martell have made in NIL if he had bolted a year early and could have done all that?
Now he's in his third school.
And how many businesses would have gotten $1 back on that?
Yeah,
Zero. So, I mean, good for Quinn Ewers that he's in a position like this, and I was hoping that we were going to mention that story. But I hate this. Like, you're now starting to affect high school football in a major way, and I just don't like it. I don't see the need for it.
Well, this is where the federal government needs to do their job on this NIL thing and step in and say high school players can't do this.
The day high school players start doing NIL, I'm out this piece. I'm telling you right now, I'm not covering high school kids making tens of thousands of dollars off of the local shoe store. I mean, I'm not trying to prevent anybody from making money the legal and right way. But that's just ridiculous. I mean, where does it stop? You know what I mean? We
love high school football, and it's fun and all, but everyone plays high school football, man.
That's getting a little bit too serious, and so I don't like that story.
Well, we've seen guys. There's a running back, Blue, right? Jaden Blue out of Houston, who's not going to play high school down in Houston, who's not going to play his senior year. He's a commitment to Texas, and that's kind of starting to happen as well. When we come back, more.